You know what the poet said? Through the travail of ages, midst the pomp and toils of war, have I fought and strove and perished countless times upon the star. As if through a glass and darkly, the age-old strife I see, where I fought in many guises, many names, but always me. You know who the poet was? Me. For over 1,000 years, Roman conquerors returning from the wars enjoyed the honor of a triumph, a tumultuous parade. In the procession came trumpeters and musicians and strange animals from the conquered territories, together with carts laden with treasure and captured armaments. The conqueror rode in a triumphal chariot, the dazed prisoners walking in chains before him. Sometimes his children, robed in white, stood with him in the chariot, or rode the trace horses. A slave stood behind the conqueror, holding a golden crown, and whispering in his ear a warning that all glory is fleeting.
Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Those were two of my favorite scenes from the Hollywood film Patent, which was released in early 1970, and it's just an epic film. Today's video will be entitled My Truth, Mi Verdad, by Juxtaposition. I can only speak from my own personal experiences because I don't have a window to see another man's soul. So I can only talk about my own personal experiences, which I hope my younger viewers appreciate, that the life of Juxtaposition was not created by looking at video games, Atari, electronic art games, or simulations on a computer or mobile phone or mobile device. It was actually by getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going out and delivering newspapers. Every single day, 7 days a week, for years, for 4 years in a row. I had a very few number of days off, very few, because you have to get a substitute for your route, because, you know, the show must go on. Anyway, one of my favorite films as a young boy was Patent, which of course starred George C. Scott. And Patent is an epic film that looks at the life of George Patton, but really focuses on World War II. George Patton is an alumni of West Point. West Point, I have several clients of mine who are graduates of West Point Military Academy on the Hudson River, right? Anyway, George C. Scott stars with Carl Malden, who was another fan favorite of mine. Carl Malden plays Omar Bradley. And believe it or not, Francis Ford Coppola had a small contribution to Patton. He was involved with screenplay and rewriting scripts and lines. You know, Francis Ford Coppola was a made man, pardon the pun, you know, because he went on to do The Godfather. About 2 years after Patton, we had Don Corleone and Marlon Brando. I think that you can see that that the fix was in for Robert Duvall and Francis Ford Coppola, who were at this time also involved with THX 1138 in San Francisco Bay Area, mostly around the Cal Berkeley campus and Lawrence Livermore Weapons Lab, and Alameda Naval Air Station, Port of Oakland, Oakland Army Base, Bechtel Corporation, the Tube, Caldecott Tunnel, all military operations, which Francis Ford Coppola, at age 28, 29, normally would not have authorization to access those properties. So I'm going to say that Hollywood picks their next generation of directors and producers, right? They're not exactly hatched organically. All right. The film Patent had these two scenes, which are very poetic and remind me of many of the feelings that are engendered in my life since I did things with groups of people, and I raced motorcycles and I raced bicycles with groups of alpha males. But then I found time to be alone, and so when you get up at 5 in the morning, and my cohorts at the paper stand, they typically slept in another 15 minutes or so. So I had 15 to 20 minutes all by myself alone with only my thoughts for company, right? And then later in life, I had 3 different dogs, and I would take my dogs out for walks like General George Patton did. And this was a time for reflection and be with your dog and enjoy nature, right? And dogs have a way of sniffing out interesting things. And you can do this in a very peaceful, tranquil environment. Tranquility and peacefulness allows you to process experiences that you've had and maybe you didn't fully understand or appreciate, or your point of view was obscured. Because, see, what I've learned in my life is that you'll never get all the information that you'd like to have. All your questions are not answered. Many of your questions go unanswered. And the only thing you're left with is your ability to process the data that you have and use your tenets of thinking, deductive reasoning, and personal experience. This is where the young people are at a monstrous disadvantage, because they don't have a lot of personal experience with human relations or with criminal activity or with trickery or magic acts. Much of what goes on in our society is designed on purpose to conceal the true facts. It's built that way. It's a matrix of mendacity. So for a new young person coming up, what chance do they have? And they have very little chance. They have a 99% chance of failing in terms of understanding what's going on in the world and who's in charge. That's all concealed from you. So it takes an older person. So a young person's got to partner up with an older person and stick to it, because it's going to be a bumpy, bumpy ride, because the truth is very bumpy. The truth runs on a rough gravel road with washboard rut whoop-de-doo patterns. It's not a smooth ride. The truth is most definitely not a smooth ride. I'll tell you what is a smooth ride: mendacity, balderdash, and poppycock. It runs like a roller coaster. It goes over, the exciting Big Dipper, but it is a simulated matrix of a metaverse, right? It's a metaverse. It's fake. It's simulation. So anyway, I'll provide a link to some of the topics I've brought up today. The film Patent, I think that was an Academy Award-winning film. It won a monster number of awards. I believe it had 7 Oscar awards, Academy Awards. Not that that particularly means much, but I think we know financially it was very successful. It made $62 million. And it cost $12 million allegedly to create the film, to produce the film, so it was hugely profitable for Hollywood. It did win George C. Scott a Best Oscar Award, and what I really love about it is that George C. Scott refused to accept his Academy Award. Don't you love that? So he won the highest honor that Hollywood had to offer him, and then he disrespected them by failure to appear at the Academy Awards, and did not accept his Best Actor Performance Academy Award. He snubbed the Academy. Don't you love it? I do. I love it. I think that shows a lot of class, in my opinion. Good for George C. Scott, because you know what? It is a joke. The Academy Awards are a joke. And they've always been a joke. I know it's exciting to dress up with the tuxedos and the lovely, designer dresses for the ladies, and everybody looks beautiful, and they play great music. The musical score to Patton is one of my favorite. I did buy the musical score album. I loved the music. I was a trumpet player at the time that this came out, and I greatly enjoyed the musical score, which was produced by, the Hollywood studio. They have a symphony, and that's who produced all this music, this beautiful music. The actual name of it, if I have it right, is Jerry Goldsmith would be the conductor, and the studio is called Hollywood Studio Symphony. That's just code for the symphony that performs exclusively for scoring music for 20th Century Fox, United Artists, and Warner Brothers, MGM, RCA Productions. All right, so what I wanted to tell you about my truth today is as follows. I too have fought many battles and engaged in many cantankerous situations over my life, and I've met literally thousands of people firsthand, spent time with them individually or in a group or a team. And I'm going to give you some real names of people that I've spent thousands of hours with, not necessarily individually, but in total. Greg Posner, who was administrator of an acute care hospital. Tom Hayes, who was the assistant administrator, who then suddenly became the acting administrator. Jim Smith was a chief financial officer and a mentor and a boss of mine. Bernie Arguier, John Nacol. Those people are world-class experts in the Medicare financial scheme. It is a scheme. They're expert at having to milk the system to maximize reimbursement from a socialized medicine program. I don't even think that John Nacol and Bernie Arguier actually understood the real purpose of Medicare and Medicaid. In California, we call it Medi-Cal, but 50% of all Medicaid money comes from the federal government, central authority, which means it comes from Switzerland. And Medicare and Medicaid are ways to control medical doctors, number one. Number two, acute care hospitals. Number three, directors of nursing and pathologists. And what you do is you create financial incentives for them to be obedient and follow what is Medicare refers to as the standard of care. And I learned all about the economics of our healthcare system, which has almost nothing to do with health and everything to do with financial manipulation of a military complex. Because everything in our society are pyramids. Everything is a hierarchy. It's the power of the pyramid, the obelisk, it's chain of command. Just like the movie Patent, which celebrated World War II and the heroism of the travails of George Patton in battle in North Africa, the invasion of Sicily, then Italy, then of course appearing in the Ardennes and storming through the mountains in Belgium into Germany, liberating these Swiss colonies along the way, because there are no nations, and World War II did not unite any nations. All it was it's like a Vietnam War for Europe. It was strategic hamlets of France, Greece, Italy, Sicily, North Africa, Algiers, Cairo, Egypt, and then the Middle East, and of course Luxembourg and Monte Carlo, which I think didn't really take a position one way or the other, right? Switzerland, did Switzerland ever get invaded or bombed by B-17 bombers? No, I think not, right? Switzerland was exempt because they were doing the banking for the Nazis, and they were doing the banking for the Russians, and they were doing the banking for the Chinese and the Americans, and you don't blow up your bank, right? Anyway, everything's like that, and so we've created our society. Our civilized society is based upon banking, number one, military force, number two, and then indoctrination, which we like to call education, with our school systems and then our university systems. And then we've created and concocted a healthcare medical system, which includes acute care hospitals, urgent care centers, and of course, Dr. Marcus Welby, right? Marcus Welby, MD, your friendly physician who is completely bribed by Medicare, who's the dominant payer of doctors. Um, I understand there's pediatricians and there's general practitioner doctors, but the overwhelming amount of money that goes to pay for hospital stays and for pharmaceuticals is for people over age 65. So I don't care how you slice it, they built the system for the elderly people in our society. All right, that's where the protocols and the standard of care are built around. We have a transportation system of airports and ports, port facilities, which is railroad tracks, intermodal transportation, interstate highways, trucking depots, containerization yards, shipping, right? Shipping over ocean, canal, rivers, lakes, and airports and ports is what the intelligence community calls it. That's what MI6 and MI5, they refer to the surveillance and control of all port facilities as airports and ports. And that's the policy for our whole world. Anyway, when you look at banking, military, and education, plus hospitals or healthcare, and you see that actually they're all integrated together. You can't run a hospital or pay doctors without money. You can't do that without a banking authority. And you can't develop weapons for the military unless you partner up with research facilities. So they co-opted all of the universities as basically working for the military and financed and paid for by the banks. So the banks pay Harvard and Yale and Princeton and UC Berkeley and UC Davis and UC Santa Cruz and UC San Francisco and UCLA. They pay all those universities, including MIT and Princeton and Tulane University in New Orleans. They pay them to make weapons to torture, torment, or murder people. They also test them out at your friendly hospital, where we have the MRI machines, the computerized scanners, the CT scanners, the X-ray machine, diagnostic equipment, and we have wireless networks now functioning at hospitals, which is a form of precision medicine. And you want to cut back the staff because you're going to have 24/7 cameras, listening devices, and telemetry devices hooked up to people through the wireless body area network, meaning that there's no cords, no plug-ins, and you don't need wearables. I do want to emphasize that wearables are no longer needed in 2026. I know that we want to promote this concept that, if you carry a cell phone, which is a tracking device, that you can be tracked, but you can be tracked if you don't carry a phone. You can be tracked if you don't carry a phone. You don't have to have an insulin pump or a heart rate monitor on you to be tracked. You don't need smart glasses or Fitbits to be tracked. You can be you'll be tracked just if your heart is pulsing, if your brain has oxygen and blood going into it, then you're putting out a signature on the screen, which your local fusion center can track and trace. Anyway, these are some of the things I've learned in my life because I have used wearables during all my sporting career, heart rate monitors, and my other telemetry data was having to do with my speed, my average speed, my current speed, my real-time speed, distance to target, number of miles. When I'm in a race, I look down to see where I'm at in the race so that I know how much time is left, what the distance is. Like I know the distance of the race, it's going to be a 65-mile race, it's going to be a 100-mile race. I want to judge, my water and my food intake and, when I need to get another bottle, because you do go through some feed stations and you want to be mindful of how much water and how much food you may need to get to the finishing line so you don't have a blood sugar problem. I'm sure if you haven't done any endurance sports, you might know what a blood sugar problem is, but every endurance athlete is keenly aware of insulin levels and energy levels. You don't need wearables to know that. It's a feeling, and also by being mindful of the time and how much exertion you've put out. This is all things that come with experience. You could read a book about it, but a book wouldn't do you no good unless you actually did hundreds of races. You need to do hundreds of competitive races and training too. But the races is where you learn the most because it's the most serious. Practice, it's hard to really get too excited about, practice, right? Practice is practice. And you should probably rest more than you should do hard work and practice. In the race, it's go time. Anytime can be go time. Anytime can be go time because you're in a war. All right? So what I want you to know is that our world really does fall into the format of the Wizard of Oz, that we are to follow the yellow brick road and that we praise our bankers. Our banks and bankers are the high priests of our society. That's the wonderful Wizard of Oz. It's your banker, right? Not your mayor, not your senator, your banker. I mean, who do you think's more important? Ron DeSantis, your governor, or Gavin Newsom? Or do you think that Nancy Pelosi or Barbara Boxer, who was a senator of California, do you think they're more important than getting access to your bank account? Hell no. Of course they're not more important. Your banker is 10,000 times more important than your governor or your senator or your representative of Congress, House of Representative. So what you should know is our society is built around ultimatums. Do this or else. We follow orders or people die. It's that simple, and it truly is that simple. But they don't want to send that message out in a blunt, harsh way. So they instead parse it, and they use applied linguistics like Noam Chomsky uses to build a career on bald-faced lying to people to their faces. Essentially what we have here is ultimatums. Ultimatums are not called that, they're called directives. Sometimes, like during COVID, we had mandates. A mandate is a command. A mandate is a command from the captain. The captain is in charge, we follow orders or people die. It's that simple. Well, that's what a mandate is. That's what a directive is. And we have directives issued continuously from the United Nations and the World Health Organization and the International Telecommunications Union, which defines all radiation poisoning. Havana syndrome throughout the world is determined by the ITU, which is an agency of the United Nations. And we have idiotic narratives pumped out by the World Economic Forum, which has no authority, has no military, because, NATO is part of the United Nations. NATO is not part of the World Economic Forum, run by Larry Ratfink, who runs a bank, right? What's more frightening, a banker or a banker that also has a propaganda division known as the World Economic Forum? Because, Larry Ratfink, he's the managing director of BlackRock, a private bank in Manhattan, New York, and Hudson Yards. So we learn this. So we learn that bankers are running the world. Bankers are running the world. Larry Ratfink, Steven Schwartzman, the Union Bank of Switzerland, UBS, Credit Suisse, which is a part of UBS, and they are a part of the BIS, Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. So now we're talking about Basel, Switzerland, Zurich, Switzerland, and Zug. Zug, Switzerland is where they're creating central bank digital currency and cryptocurrency right there where Jennifer Doudna's CRISPR Therapeutics is, because they want to connect up the banking tokenized economy with your bone marrow, meaning your DNA, right? That's all being done in Switzerland, and it's all planned out. They've got over 100 years of planning to basically tether you to your computer in the sky, your HAL 9000, which will be your bank. But your bank wants to co-op all your healthcare informations too, because they want to know your fingerprint and your DNA and your genes. And they want to know what kind of illnesses you have and how often you go to the doctor for precision medicine. And they want to know how much social credit you deserve as being an obedient citizen who pledges their allegiance to a Swiss flag. Because all the flags are Swiss and all the nations are colonies. They're Hunger Games. The United States is a Hunger Game. And if you look no further than Donald Trumpster, he is the clown. And then you've got a bank running the show for Switzerland because the United States is insolvent. Donald Trump doesn't even have real hair. His hair is fake. His Mar-a-Lago, he doesn't own it. It's not his. He doesn't own his script. He doesn't book his appointment book. It's booked for him. He has a controller. And Joe Biden, they just wheel him around in a wheelchair, I guess, and eat his meals out of a straw. So don't fall for the potato in your tailpipe and follow the yellow brick road. The or else in the movie with Dorothy Gale and Toto the dog was that if you don't follow my command, you're going to find yourself off the yellow brick road in the weeds. And when you're in the weeds, you're going to be pursued by the flying monkeys and the wicked witch of the West, right? Evil. That's her name. Her name is Evil. The wicked witch of the West is evil. The wicked witch of the East, remember that Dorothy's house landed on and crushed? That was Evelyn. That was Evelyn. Evelyn is Evelyn. She's from the East Coast. And she had a house fall on her. Meanwhile, on a broomstick was Evil. The dangerous sister of the wicked witch of the East was the wicked witch of the West. Anyway, that's the world in which we live in. We live in the Wizard of Oz, and there's this Emerald City that's actually the color of gray and black, but they give you a pair of green lensed glasses so that when you look through the obscure lens of your glasses in today's society, you see the Emerald City. But it's not really emerald at all. It's black and gray. It's a dystopian society, right? Where people pledge their allegiance to a Swiss flag. 13 stripes. Anyway, that's what I've learned. And of all the people that I've met, and I've literally just thousands of people who I've met in my life, including Ronald Reagan and Zsa Zsa Gabor and Doc Severinsen and Johnny Carson and Ellen DeGeneres. Yeah, I met her. I was with her for approximately 45 minutes total. Sam Kinison, I spent, 3 minutes with him in a parking lot there at the Comedy Store, in the parking lot adjacent to, the ballroom. And Fess Parker, better known as Davy Crockett and or Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone for ABC television. Davy Crockett for Disney films. I spent the most time, I think, with Henry Silva, who played Handsome Johnny in Johnny Cool, the Hollywood film Johnny Cool, filmed on Wilshire Boulevard at the Beverly Hilton Hotel on Wilshire. Spent about 4 hours with Henry Silva. He always plays, the bad guy, the mafioso bad guy. And Fess Parker would be number 2. I met Fess Parker multiple times, but spent less time with him in one sitting as I did with Henry Silva. I was at a wedding with Henry Silva, so that was about 4 hours total. Nick Horn of West Point Academy, John Tarpey, West Point alum, Tom Clausen, Leland Prussia. Hope I'm getting through. Tom Clausen was the CEO of Bank of America and then became the president of the World Bank in Washington, D.C. That is an agency of the United Nations, if you didn't know. George Shultz, he was president of Bechtel Construction, then became Secretary of State under Ronald Reagan. Spent at least 3 hours with him. Caspar Weinberger, spent 3 hours with him. Jerry Brown, Moonbeam Brown, what was he, twice governor of California and one-time mayor of Oakland. Met him on a dog walk at Lake Merritt. Let's see, who else I got here? Well, I'm not going to go through the list because I got about 1,000 people I've met. But of all the thousands of people that I've either met socially or through private clubs or weddings and or worked with in business situations, there are only 5 people who stand out as being men of honor that made a huge influence on me, that were very, very influential. I mean, everyone has an impact on me in some way, but in terms of the ones that I think most fondly about and most profoundly about, would be David Gregg, who was a scientist, chemist, world-class chemist for the Department of Energy, assigned to the Lawrence Livermore Weapons Lab. And his name appears on over 275 patents for the Department of Energy. Okay, and he authored his own book regarding civil defense. It was kind of a tongue-in-cheek parody of the Ronald Reagan Star Wars program. That earned Dave Gregg another distinction, Asshole of the Month for Hustler magazine. Anyway, I have an utmost respect for Dave Gregg, even though he spent his entire career building weapons to kill people. Shows you the juxtaposition in the situation I have with Dave Gregg, because I don't like what he did, but I did like him as a person. Another example is Dick Bugsy Mann, or Richard Mann. He was twice national champion of the American Motorcycle Association in the United States. In 1963 and again in 1971, he won the Grand Poobah Award, Grand National Champion. It's 5 different styles of motorcycle racing. You got to be one talented person to be so good at everything. Doesn't what necessarily was the best at road racing or 1 mile flat track or half mile or the what's called short track and TT racing, but he was the best racer of all racers. He also won the Daytona 200 motorcycle race twice winner of Daytona, and twice Grand National Champion. And he taught me the mental attitude to be a winner at motorcycle racing. And I do attribute my success in motorcycle racing to the little pearls of wisdom that I absorbed like a sponge, parking my car next to Dick Mann, always wanting to seek him out and just listen to what he had to say. Now, Roger DeCoster is one of my all-time favorite heroes, heroic figure from childhood, but I didn't really spend much time with him. I got his autograph when I was 15 years old, and I spent 30 seconds with him. And I know a lot of people who have spent more time with him, but I followed his career, and my entire life, and he's just a prince. He's a prince, a gentleman. He's multiple national champion of Belgium. He's 5-time world champion. He's 4 times Trans USA, Trans AMA champion in United States motocross. He has coached and directed American teams. He moved here to Trabuco Canyon in Orange County, and I know where he lives. And near Santiago Canyon, but he lives in Trabuco Canyon. It's a very beautiful place up on the hills above the ocean, setback, and he's managed teams here in the United States, and 25 times he's won international competitions with American riders. Even though, I don't know how they feel about him in Belgium, but since he kind of moved away, right? But he was the hero of Belgium, the motorcycle hero of Belgium. Eddie Merckx being the other hero. Those are the 2 big heroes in Belgium. Well, they have a lot of heroes. They have Johan Museo, but the biggest hero is Eddie Merckx, and the second biggest hero is Roger DeCoster. But Roger DeCoster has been living here in the United States, so they've had to get by without their 5-time world champion. But we embrace him here. And he's a class act. He's been through a lot of hardships and a lot of setbacks. But the only thing people really remember, and all I really remember about Roger DeCoster, is all his successes and victories and his classy behavior. Another gentleman is Myron Spalding, who ran a boat repair yard in Sausalito, Marin County. My father introduced me to him, as a child, and another real classy guy. And then Tom Camp, who was a partner at Ernst & Ernst in the San Francisco office, and he is a world-class, knowledgeable person of healthcare finance, economics. He is a well-sought-out speaker. They pay him a lot of money to talk in front of financial people, financial management people, controllers, chief financial officers, accountants, auditors, because he grew up with the Medicare program and went through all the machinations, revisions, and changes of it. And so those are my five: is Dave Gregg, Tom Camp, who personally owned a B-17 bomber, a P-40, and a Mustang P-51 fighter plane, all World War II, circa 1942 to 1945. The P-51 came out at the end of the war, so it really wasn't used much. But I built all those airplanes as a child, so I admired a CPA who owned three of the airplanes that I built as models. I never told Tom Camp that. I never told him that I actually built the planes that he flew. He flew those planes, and he owned those planes. Anyway, so Dave Gregg, Tom Camp, Dick Bugsy Mann, Roger DeCoster, five-time world champion, and Myron Spalding of Marin County, and boat racing in San Francisco Bay. Well known amongst all successful sailboat racers. Everybody knows Myron Spalding, including my uncle Jack, who has count them, two national championships in sailing. One on Lake Michigan and another in the San Francisco Bay. My Uncle Jack. That's right. Say, I got a membership for life in the St. Francis Yacht Club on the basis of having count them, two national championships. All right, so I didn't learn all this on a video game or fooling around in the metaverse or wearing a meta helmet, right? I mean, I went sailing with my Uncle Jack, and let me tell you something. You better eat your Wheaties, man. It was pretty scary. Pretty scary going sailing with Uncle Jack. He was a speed demon. And of course, I race motorcycles, so I guess it runs in the family because I like speed too, right? Anyway, what you should know is those five men, Dave Gregg, Tom Camp, Dick Mann, Roger DeCoster, and Myron Spalding, they are world class at what they do. World class. World class. And with all their success, which is way more success than your average person, I mean, they have mostly failures probably in their life. The majority of your life is done with less than a victory. You don't get on the top step. Nevertheless, these are world class people, right? And you wouldn't believe the amount of negative feedback all five of those men got. And it just blows my mind as a admirer of those men. I can't think of someone who's really qualified to shine their shoes. And when I hear people say a negative comment, about Dick Mann or what motorcycles he raced, that they were junk. Well, he really goes fast on junk motorcycles. Or that Tom Camp was a jerk or a dummy. It's just the opposite. They're world class, right? And so, yeah, they're different. And they all had to put up with evilness in their lives because our society is based on treachery and deceit and trickery. And these men rose to very high levels at the Department of Energy and a national laboratory, at one of the world's largest accounting firms. Tom Camp is a partner. Dick Mann, twice, national champion, twice Daytona 200 champion. Roger DeCoster, five-time world champion, multiple national champion. Myron Spalding, people came from all over the world for him to repair or build a custom boat for them. Mostly he did, modifications for racing boats and or repairs of ordinary boats. I mean, he did have to pay the bills, but people sought him out from all over the world. And I just thought to myself, isn't that interesting that the most talented, most skilled, most revered people get negative feedback? So don't be afraid if people think you're kooky, or they don't like your ideas, or they say ad hominem attack. They attack you. They say things like you wear a tinfoil hat, or you live in your mother's basement. I've had those things said to me. I've also got into it with some elite private bankers, and I really pushed them to the point where I made them feel very uncomfortable That's what they would tell me is, you're making me feel uncomfortable. That means I'm getting dangerously close to the truth. That's what that means. And one thing private bankers do not like kryptonite to Superman, they do not like truthful facts and circumstances, because it makes them feel guilty and it makes them feel like they're schmucks and criminals, which they are, okay? So what a banker does to push juxtaposition away, I don't know if any of you have had this experience or not, but when you have a person who lives in a $20 million home who you make feel uncomfortable, they'll say these little catchphrases. I think they go to a elocution class where they're taught this. It kind of sounds to me, juxtaposition, like you've been drinking. Has anyone ever said that to you? It sounds like you've been drinking. Then if that doesn't work, if that doesn't get me to shut up and I keep going, then the banker will pivot to the next polite ad hominem attack. It sounds as if you have lost your way. Juxtaposition has lost his way. Has anyone ever said that to you? I ask. And then finally, if those two ad hominem remarks, which imply that I'm a drunkard or that I'm confused and lost, I've gone off the yellow brick road, right? I'm in the weeds. If those don't work, then of course the banker reverts to the coup de grace kill shot where he says to me, juxtaposition, this conversation is over. And they don't speak after that. Anyway, that's my truth, right? That's mi verdad. Mi verdad. Mi verdad is that private bankers engage in felonious activities and have an omerta code of silence, and when juxtaposition tries to press them for the details, they engage first in sophistry, then they try to wield like a dagger judicial notification, where they try to tell me that perjury is truth. Then they attempt to use exclusionary rules to disable evidence or to exclude evidence or to exclude witnesses who may be listening to the conversation with juxtaposition. They want to clear the room before they drop the bomb on me, meaning that this conversation is over. They don't really want anyone else to hear them say that. It's kind of an F you, so it's an impolite. It's the way a banker says F you. They say it by uttering the words, the cowardly words, this conversation is over. But that's banker speak. All right? So anyway, just that's my video for today, is I want you to know that I speak my truth, maybe not so quietly, but surely I do clearly and coherently. And you should too. You know, you don't have to have a window to look into the conscience of another. You have your own personal experience, which is your own personal truth. You should embrace it, and you should seek out more experiences and associate with other people that you admire, as like I do. I admire, some of these people are dead, of course. David Gregg, Tom Camp, Dick Mann, Roger DeCoster, and Myron Spalding. I have great affection, and I'll defend those five men. They're one thing for sure, they're all brave. They all had to put up with a lot of BS. They had, dishonest people to try to associate with them. You'll notice when you're successful and you're of a world-class level, everyone will seek you out. Certainly all the politicians will. They all want to get a photo op with you. They want your autograph. They want to promote you. They want to pimp you out. And those men dealt with all of those people. They all dealt with presidents. They all dealt with governors. They all dealt with people at cocktail parties who are famous or celebrities. And it didn't change them. They were still true to themselves. That's the point of today's video. That's what's the point of my life, is I don't want celebrities or other influencers to alter, being myself. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. We'll talk soon. Do share my videos, because I am heavily shadow banned. Bye now.